Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5. And if I remember correctly, episode number 730 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Do. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Friday. Yay! September 5th, 2025. Of course, it's only been a 4-day week, but it's still back to school is a different type of a 4-day week because it's usually pretty busy, judging by the numbers for our shows. Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, the holiday and the Friday leading into the holiday and the first day of back to school for those who did go back to school on Tuesday. Those usually have people a little busy, and our numbers were a little down. But then once we got to the first full day of school, numbers back up. So clearly, you have been very busy, even though it has been a shorter week, so to say. So I'm sure everybody's looking forward to a little moment to exhale over the weekend. And I hope that you have the opportunity to do that now that a lot of us are getting back into some routines that we will hold for the next 9 months or so. But I'm feeling good here. It's a nice day here at the Beaver Lodge, kids and cubs. Not too cold, not too sunny at the moment, but it is expected to get rather warm later today. Yesterday, unfortunately, the good weather did not hold long past the show, and my tennis was unfortunately rained out. Sad panda. Or sad beaver, I should say. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, A. And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly, but hope to be able to be talking to him soon and have either some more grizzly growls or pre-record with him so that we can get you your regular dose of grizzly because I know you miss him. I sure do. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health today? Well, if it is not going well, as I often say here on the show, I hope a little time here with me and with the lovely members of the DAMFAM will do a little bit to raise your spirits and bring you a little bit of calm if you do need that. I am doing pretty well, I have to say. There's some interesting things that happened yesterday that have contributed to my mood, I must say. Yesterday, yours truly had to go and do some paperwork because, unfortunately, on one of my trips over the course of the month of August, either I was inattentive or Somebody had very nimble fingers, one or the other, but my wallet went AWOL. So I had to replace everything, all my ID, credit cards, bank cards, and all that kind of stuff. So, and canceling cards and stuff. So I've been doing that over the course of the month. And yesterday was my day to go and have my health card and get my photo ID renewed. It took me a little longer because, as you know, um, um, if you've had to do this, you have to have a proof of citizenship. And myself, since I was born in La Belle Province, there are, at least in the 70s, there were no birth certificates. Your birth certificate is your actual baptismal certificate. So I have this uh, old piece of paper that's existed since 1973 that is now turned sort of the brown that old paper turns and is ripped in a couple of places. It is very delicate, and I had to go back to my filing cabinet in Ottawa to retrieve it. Um, and so I did that and I brought it to Service Ontario. And I know that we're often very quick to complain about in Canada about government and government services. And we don't actually often say much when we actually get good service or government does things right. So I would like to give a shout out to the staff at the Service Ontario Centre on Division Street in Kingston, Ontario. What for having to go renew ID because your wallet was either lifted or lost, um, is not a fun experience because you're already frustrated at having to have to do it in the first place and frustrated that your wallet is indeed gone. And of course, once you get over the scare, and fortunately for me, between the time I discovered it was gone, um, nobody had used the cards or anything. So fortunately, I don't have to do any anti-fraud stuff. So thank heavens for small mercies, because it was gone for several hours before I noticed. So there would have been plenty of time to run things up on those cards. But wherever it ended up in a place where that was not done. Unfortunately, I did lose some money. Uh, so that mm, that ticket for Chicago that I saw in Quebec City, I ended up paying for it twice because I bought both tickets, one for me and one for my friend, and my friend gave me the money, and I promptly lost the money pretty much the very next day. Yay! So, so yeah, that part also makes one a little upset. So yeah, Kits and Cubs wasn't necessarily in the best of mood when I went, uh, but the staff there was absolutely fantastic. The service was fantastic. Everything was friendly, efficient. Um, I really could not have asked for better. I was in and out within half an hour. Seriously, between the time I got in, registered, right, waited for my turn, got called, and I was just going there to handle my health card, and I said, "Well, while I'm there, can I do my ID card?" Because I thought it was this sort of waterfall process that you could apply for your health card, and then you had to receive it and have it in person, and then with that health card, you could apply for the ID card. But the lady at the counter was able to do both in pretty much no time at all, lickety split, in and out in half an hour, friendly, courteous. The place was clean. Everybody seemed to be in a good mood. I could hear other staff people talking to people that were there and, laughing and sunshine in their voice and making jokes and, being very nice. So, whatever is going on there, whoever's operating that place has created a wonderful, beautiful culture in which the people who are working there seem to be happy, seem to be eager to provide really good service and actually do. So, thank you very, very much. Just figure, you need to give a shout out when things work well. So I'm going to do that. And on that front as well, I need to also give a thank you and sit down for this one to our good, Skippy air quotes, friend, Heva Chipmunk or Eva Chipyuk, because if you remember a while ago, we reported on her having to traveled to Poland on her European passport and didn't bring her Canadian passport with her to get back in. And then, of course, that affected her ability to come back home because there has been a rule change, I think, in 2016 or 2017, where you absolutely do need proof of Canadian citizenship to get back into Canada. Before, you didn't necessarily need that. But you do need it, or else you're going to have some difficulty getting back in. And she made a big stink of it all over the internet and whatnot, and basically people mocked her. Well, someone close to me recently had to travel, and they brought one passport because they are dual citizens, and didn't bring the other one, and got caught in the exact same situation. And they called me, and because of what happened to Heva Chipyuk or Heva Chipmunk, I was able to counsel them, and they. It was on a weekend, and it was less than 12 hours before their departure, but I was able to find the form that they had to fill in to ask for a special authorization because fortunately the Department of Global Affairs has ways of recognizing Canadian citizens if you happen to lose your passport when you're away or something of the sort, something happens to your passport. You can call and they can find you and send you a special authorization. And everybody, the person in question was worried because, well, the travel was in less than 12 hours. And, what if there's a long line of things and, of applications and all that type of stuff, and it doesn't get done on time? And what if I have to buy a new plane ticket and that's going to cost me so much? And, all that type of stuff. And, and I'm sitting there, don't worry, we have systems, we have processes for these. Don't worry, it'll all be taken care of. You'll be fine. We have triage for this because I know, for example, when people are applying for passports, sometimes you need to go travel at the last minute, right? For example, somebody passes away and you need to go to a funeral in another country or need to settle in the state. And some people don't have their passport and they need to get one relatively quickly. Well, Passport Canada does have a manner in which, if you need a passport urgently, that you can sort of jump in front of the line, and you have to do certain things in a certain way. You probably have to bring it in personally or something like that. But they can get it to you within a certain number of days, 7 or 10 days, really quickly. Um, so I figured, since there's triage for that, they must obviously look at the dates of the applications and what's your travel date and put things in a certain order. So I said, there's probably exists for this system too. And sure enough, even though they applied on a weekend, less than 12 hours before their departure, when they noticed that there was an issue with their passport, they got their travel authorization document and they were able to travel home. Absolutely no problem. Of course, their passport is canceled and they're going to have to apply for a new passport because in Canada, if Global Affairs Canada gets word, and if you have to apply for a special authorization, then you've given them word that your passport is not necessarily in your control. They cancel it automatically as a safety precaution. So yes, the hassle is that you have to order another one, but at least you don't have to pay another 1,000 something dollars for a new plane ticket to get home, right? So, having to reapply for a passport is a minor inconvenience, considering the potential alternative outcome, which could be way more expensive. And all of that happened without a hitch. Just went online, filled out a very easy to fill out form, and yep, enough before departure, the authorization came. Whatever level of stress, which is unavoidable, obviously, when something happens to your passport, it's just like, oh my God, you can, when you watch horror movies like this and the thing zooms in, everything narrows, and you hear all the music, you you sort of have that moment. It's like, oh crap, what am I going to do? So, but yeah, no need for any of that stress because the system worked. There was a system, and the system worked as one would expect it to work in that type of circumstance. So, shout out to government working well. Way to go, kids and cubs. By the way, if ever you have recently had or have ever had a very, very, very positive experience of government or government working well, please let us know about it. Because we would like to hear about it and share those stories too. True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com. Send us them. And yeah, we'll read them onto the show because sometimes we don't give enough credit to government for working well when it does. We just sort of gloss over, oh, well, it did what it was supposed to, and then we focus on the negative again. But sometimes it's good to take a time to give a shout out for things that are going well. The other thing that happened yesterday is that after I applied for all of those and everything was successful, I stopped in for a hot chocolate, and my beaver sweetie came to join me. And as he entered the cafe, came and greeted me, and I was obviously happy to see him, as I always am, even though it had only been 2 hours since I seen him last. But was very happy to see him, and there was a lady sitting at the table next to us with whom I had already had an interaction because the table next to us was like literally next to us, and she asked if she could move it a little bit to the side because she was there with her son. I said, "Yeah, no problem." And that was a friendly exchange. And then she just looked at us and says, "Oh God, I can tell that you guys really, really do love each other just from the way you greeted each other, the way that you looked at him." She was talking about me when he came in and the way he was so tender and gentle with you. It's my beaver sweetie with me when he said hello. And I guess we struck up a little bit of a conversation, admitted, she admitted that, she had been with her love for 17 years. It'll be 13 for me and my beaver sweetie very soon in November. And, talking about, sometimes you go through rougher patches and better patches and that type of stuff. And, confessed, as you all know, kids and cubs, that last year, or been a little more than a year ago now, we went through a bit of a rough patch. And uh, I will readily admit there were once or twice during that rough patch where I had moments where I thought, "Oh man, I don't know how long I can keep doing this because this is rough. Like this is a lot." But um, even though we're not married, for better for worse, for richer for poor, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, right? So we tried to be a good partner, and tried to stand shoulder to shoulder, and make sure I had his back, even if it was difficult. Because no matter how difficult it was for me, it was definitely more difficult for him, whatever he was going through at that moment. And we got through that moment, and we are closer than ever now. As a result, when you go through those tribulations and you come out the other side, and ultimately, with growth, maybe a scar or two, uh, but for everything else, pretty much unscathed otherwise. Um, it often draws people closer, and that was the case for my beaver sweetie and I. So we had a little exchange on that, but it was just so nice for someone to share in our joy, share in our love, and and to express it publicly. So it was very welcome. It was just this lovely moment of human kindness that warmed my heart deeply, and it stayed with me the rest of the day. And I woke up with it still this morning. I have that feeling. It's like I want to run up to a couple now and say, "Oh my God, you guys are so cute together," or something, right? Uh, because it's one of those things that when it happens to you, you want to pay it forward. You want to keep the good vibes going. So, kits and cubs, early words of wisdom in the show. But if you have the opportunity today, if you see some either some young love or some love that has clearly lasted a long time. Sometimes you see some elderly couples and they're sitting on a park bench together, and it's like, oh my God, they are so in love. Like you can tell, right? Um, let them know that you see it and that it's beautiful. Can't hurt. That'll probably make someone's day. So, some early words of wisdom. All right, let's look in the magic monitor and see who is here today. We have Kit Argosy Acres, Kit Uncover the News. We have Kit Elaine saying, "Good morning, everyone. TGIF indeed. Thank God I am fly." Hmm. If people are wondering where I get that, by the way, it's a song by a group called XG. It's a girl group. Um, and they have a song called TGIF, Thank God I'm Fly. Wake up, look up in the mirror, TGIF. Damn, thank God I'm fly. So it's a bit of my theme song. Makes me feel good about myself when I hear it, especially when I sing it. Strut around the house. I look good today. We have Who else do we have? We have Kit Bucky saying, "Good morning, all." We have Kit Gray saying, "Good morning, DAMFAM." Cat W is with us. Hello. I like having Kit Cat. I like having Cat W because I like to say Kit Kat. Can you tell I love chocolate? Good morning, Kit Kat W. Kit Tabby G giving us a wave. Kit playing with 3D is here saying, "Good morning, folks." Kit Frank is here. Yes, saying, "Gotta love 4-day weeks." Yes, indeed. I'm right with you, my friend. We have Kit Linda M saying, "Good morning." Good morning to you. And happy belated birthday to Mr. Linda. I very much hope that he enjoyed the meatballs and rice pudding, if I remember correctly, because you said that was his jam and that's what you made for him on his birthday. So, all my love to you and, of course, to your sweetie for his special day. Who else do we have with us, kids and cubs, in the chat? James is here. Good morning. Nice to see you. I think it might have been a couple of days since you've been here last, or at least since I noticed. So thank you for joining us. It's always lovely to have your company. And James says, "Hey there," to everyone here. Who else do we have? Kit Uncover. I'm sure I mentioned it before, but if not, Kit Uncover bringing us the news here in the chat, making sure that we keep abreast. Oh, mentioning here that the Duchess of Kent has died at the age of 92. I'm not sure who the Duchess of Kent is by name. I might have to go look that up earlier. All right. Who else do we have in the chat with us? Kit Wishful is here saying, "Good morning." Hey, nice to see you, Kit Wishful. I hope all is well with you. And Kit Jason is here. Good morning. Nice to see you again today. Kit Gilbert is here as well, joining us from Knoxville, Tennessee. Hope you are doing well in your part of the world. And thank you for joining us again yet this morning. Kit Sharon is here as well. I think Kit Sharon is having some tech difficulties this morning. It's not me for once. Ah, oh my God, it's contagious. I gave it to you. Kit Cassie here saying, "Good day, people." And Kit Christian is here. Ah, lovely. Good morning to you, sir. Glad you are here. Kit Bucky is here. Says Service Ontario is a great concept. It's well designed and delivers. Well, in my case, yesterday, that was definitely the case. I have to agree with you. Kit Nona Carol is here saying, "Good morning." Kit Christian, "I've worked for government for over 20 years, still waiting for something good." See, we have the full range of experiences here among the DAMFAM. We have Kit Chris here saying, "Good morning, pals." Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Kit, my dogs are goth, are with us today. Again, it's a Friday, so it's almost like the gang's all here. It's so lovely when that happens. Il today is here as well. Good morning to you. Hope all is good in your world. And Kit Saucy, finally, not among the first today, but saying, "Ugh, it's so humid." So wherever she is in Canada, I believe, I know it's more on the East Coast. Yes, a little humid down there. Haven't heard too much about the wildfires over the past few days out in Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. So I'm hoping that means that there was enough rain and some things have calmed down. But I also haven't been actively looking over the past few days because there's just been so many other stories. And I guess it's gotten bumped a little bit. But I'm hoping that things are going better. And I will definitely be looking for more information because I'm just as a Canadian, I'm curious to see how things are progressing there. All right, kids and cubs. Let's see what we have for you today, kids and cubs. Well, actually, I know what we have for you today because I have an outline. But we're going to start with things economic because we have been talking about this for a little bit. And I keep on referring to Q2 data that has come out for Canada, which came out last week. But I haven't had a chance to get into it with you guys because, well, a lot has been going on. But if I am looking, now I have to find the information. There we go. Uh, Canada's second quarter data came in, and it's stated that GDP has contracted, and bets for a rate cut from the Bank of Canada have increased as a result. This is according to Promit Mukherjee of Yahoo Finance. Says that Canada's economy contracted in the second quarter much more than anticipated on an annualized basis as US tariffs squeezed exports, but higher household and government spending cushioned the impact, according to data released on Friday. The GDP for the quarter that ended June 30th decelerated by 1.6% from downwardly revised growth of 2.0. So in the first quarter, we had growth come in at 2.2%, and that was the initial estimate. And then after more data came in, it was revised to 2%, so a little lower than originally announced. And then in the second quarter, decelerated by 1.6%. Statistics Canada said taking the total annualized growth in the first 6 months of the year to 0.4%. So for the year, we're still not in negative. Overall, not in negative territory, but for the second quarter, definitely in negative territory. And since the classic definition of a recession is two consecutive quarters of negative growth, we're technically halfway there based on economic data, based on that contraction. This was the first quarterly contraction in 7 quarters. A larger than expected deceleration increases the chances of a Bank of Canada rate cut in September. The Bank of Canada has kept rates steady at about 2.75% at its last 3 meetings. Money markets increased their September 17th rate cut bets to 48% after the GDP data was released from 40% before. So last Friday, when this data came out, prior to it coming out, people were betting that there was a 40% chance that there would be a rate cut. With this data, including the contraction, that increased to 48%. So still more people are betting that there wouldn't be a rate increase on September 17th than are, but that gap has narrowed. And that's as of this data result on Friday. There may have been a couple of things that have changed since then because I'll have more data for you later that may indicate that that's the case here. StatsCan said that the economy contracted by 0.1% in June, mainly led by a decline in output from goods-producing industries that account for a quarter of the country's GDP. Quote, that weaker than expected trend in monthly figures makes today's release supportive for a forecast of a September interest rate cut, said Andrew Grantham, senior economist at CIBC Capital Markets. However, he added that jobs and inflation data for August would be critical for the rate's decision. The quarterly GDP is calculated based on income and expenditure, while the monthly GDP is derived from industrial output. That's why we give both numbers there. In this one, there's both numbers. There's the number for the industrial output for June, which showed a 0.1 contraction, and then the quarterly GDP based on income and expenditure showed the deceleration of 1.6%. This is the third month in a row that GDP based on industry output declined, and was the first time in 3 years that the economy contracted for 3 consecutive months. Analysts polled by Reuters had forecasted a second quarter GDP would contract by 0.6%, and the June monthly GDP would expand by 0.1%. So that did not happen. An advance estimate for July shows the economy could grow by 0.1% on a month-to-month basis, meaning the third quarter would mark an improvement. Still, economists said that slim growth in July would be worse than the Bank of Canada had predicted, which could bolster chances that it steps in to support growth. Quote, so while the July flash showed that the economy largely recovered from the lost ground from June, our early tracking points to a flat to slightly negative estimate for Q3 GDP, said Royce Mendes, managing director at Desjardins. The Bank of Canada had said last month that after a substantial contraction in the second quarter, Canada's economy would likely grow around 1% in the second half under the current tariff scenarios. The Canadian dollar traded down 0.17% to $1.3377 to the US dollar, or 72.62 US cents. Yields on the 2-year government bonds dropped further after data by 2.8 basis points to 2.664. So uh, that's not bad. The yields dropping means that we are paying less interest for people who are buying bonds. So it seems that despite this, there's still a sentiment on the international markets that our bonds are indeed secure. Exports declined 7.5% in the second quarter, the statistics agency said, adding this was the biggest drop in 5 years. Of course, here you have to count various markets either loading up on inventory in previous quarters to get ahead of the Liberation Day tariffs that came down in April, which was a lot of importing stuff in the first quarter, meaning that there was less need to import stuff in the second quarter, which means that would create the situation or the context for our exports to go down. So the wide-ranging numbers in terms of exports and whatnot is being affected by consumer and industrial behavior with regard to their inventories as it comes to longer term or medium term plays to try to avoid the worst of tariff turmoil. So these numbers, while 7.5 is an impressive drop, it has to be put into the context that, there might have been different pressures making it such that there was increased artificially increased or decreased activity in any certain quarters rather than just the regular smooth outflow and inflow of goods. Business investment in machinery and equipment contracted for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic, with investments falling 0.6% in the second quarter. Domestic demand, however, grew by 3.5%, indicating health in the domestic economy. So it seems that Canadians are doing their bit to shore up the Canadian economy by spending, which is spending more, which is good for us. The boost came mainly from household final consumption expenditure, which jumped by 4.5% on an annualized basis, residential investments, which rose 6.3%, and government final consumption expenditure was surged by 5.1%, StatsCan noticed. So, more Canadians buying local, probably in this case. Also, if we're looking at some extra economic data here, um, Statistics Canada said that gross domestic product declined 0.4% in Q2 from the first quarter. I think I mentioned that, largely because of a drop of exports and decreased business investment. As mentioned, like I was mentioning earlier, the overall economic decline was partially offset by higher household spending among Canadians and lower imports. So we've been exporting less, but we've also been importing less. Final domestic demand across Canada, which represents final consumption expenditures and investment in fixed capital, was up 0.9% in the second quarter of 2025. As we mentioned, when we're talking about the flows of exports and imports, they declined 7.5% in the second quarter, but they had increased 1.4% in the first quarter. So, and then again, the Q2 decline being attributed to US tariffs here. Exports of passenger cars and light trucks fell 25% in the second quarter, while exports of industrial machinery, equipment, and parts dropped 18.5%. Again, we know they have sectoral tariffs on steel and aluminum and on cars and stuff. So these are all things that are affected by those. However, the export decline was moderated somewhat by a 1.3 decline in international imports during Q2. So we've needed to import less as well. Business investment in machinery and equipment fell 0.6% in the second quarter of the year, as every group recorded declines except computers and computer equipment. Outside of 2020, the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, this was the slowest pace of investment in machinery and equipment since the end of 2016, said Statistics Canada. Compensation of employees edged up 0.2% during Q2, which was the smallest increase since the second quarter of 2016. And the household savings rate fell to 5% in the second quarter, down from 6% in Q1. So some Canadians are spending, but it seems that they might be dipping a little bit into household savings in order to do that. However, household spending among Canadians increased 1.1% in the second quarter after rising 0.1% in the first quarter. Also, residential real estate investments rose by 1.5% in the second quarter, driven by an increase in new construction. So that is definitely some positive news uh, because, yes, we definitely like the idea of increases in construction. Hopefully, that is also residential construction and not just industrial. Now, even though the economy shrunk in Q2, economists are not yet fretting a recession, according to Craig Lord, who's also writing for Yahoo Finance here. Few economists are raising the alarm about Canada possibly being in a recession, and not all forecasters are convinced the economic weakness will push the Bank of Canada to cut interest rates this month. That's what I was saying here. Yeah, whereas um, 48% are claiming at this point that the Bank of Canada will lower interest rates. Sorry, my screen timed out again today, and don't know why. This is happening. It normally never happens during the show, but now it has happened 2 shows in a row. I'm going to have to look at why that keeps happening, but I don't think that that shows up for you on the YouTube who are watching live, kids and cubs, because when it happened yesterday, I noticed that I did not disappear from your screens when that happened. Although I am looking at my screen now, and it seems that I've frozen. So, yes, hopefully, kits and cubs, when the screen times out like that, it doesn't cut off what it is that I am saying. But I'm back with you now. So let's get back to the story. Um, so yes, like I said, all forecasters are not convinced that the weakness will push the Bank of Canada to decrease rates. So it's good that the economists are not panicking with regard to this number, saying, "Oh my God, a recession is inevitable." It seems that they don't believe that here. It should come as no surprise, this is a quote, that the Canadian economy struggled in Q2 as tariffs ramped up, said Benjamin Reitzes, BMO's managing director of Canadian rates and macro strategist, in a note to clients Friday. Economists expected a sharp slowing in growth last quarter as businesses seemed to rush orders early in the year to get ahead of tariffs, as I mentioned, boosting activity in the first quarter and cooling the economy off in the second. Last quarter saw net exports tick at 8.1 percentage points away from real GDP. Let's try that again. Last quarter saw net exports take 8.1 percentage points away from real GDP growth. Wrights has noted that was the second highest toll on record, behind only the COVID-19 pandemic. Exports of vehicles, industrial machinery, and travel services were sharply down last quarter, and business investment in machinery and equipment also sank. RBC Assistant Chief Economist Nathan Jansen said in an interview that he sees more mixed signals in the data beyond the headline number. Weakness in the Canadian economy was concentrated in trade exposed sectors last quarter, he said, while relative strength in consumer spending helped offset the impact. Final domestic demand, a measure that strips out trade flows and inventories from GDP figures, rebounded from a decline in the first quarter of that year. Quote, there wasn't a lot of evidence that the weakness was spreading to other sectors of the economy at this point, Jansen said. So it seems that the industries that are most affected by the hardest tariffs are the one taking the hardest hits, but that there's not really a contagion effect throughout the rest of the economy. Wrights has said that these are signs of domestic strength and that these signs are somewhat confusing, but he questioned how sustainable those trends would be as tariffs put a damper on activity elsewhere. StatsCan said real GDP declined 0.1% in the month of June, matching contractions in April and May, as mentioned earlier from other stories here that we've been quoting in bringing this information to you. A third decline in the tariff-struck manufacturing sector in 4 months meant a drag on June business activity, the agency said. Um, and then Jansen says that RBC doesn't expect the slowdown in Q2 to be repeated in the third quarter. Advanced manufacturing and wholesale trade figures show some signs of recovery in July, he said. Ongoing exemptions at the border for goods compliant with the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement are also limiting the broader impact of tariffs, Jansen said. RBC is also expecting Canada's unemployment rate could tick a bit higher than the current levels of 6.9%, but will largely plateau as trade weakness fails to infiltrate the rest of the economy. I've been reading in other documents here that it might go as high as 7.1%, and that might be the peak that it hits. Quote, we would still think as a most likely outcome that we won't get another decline in Q3 GDP, that you'll get back to slow but positive growth, Jansen said. The second quarter drop was a tick below the Bank of Canada's forecast for the quarter published at the end of July, when the Governing Council held its policy rate steady at 2.75%. And then again mentions that the central bank will be revising the decision on September 19th to see whether or not rates stay the same or change. Andrew Grantham, a senior economist at CIBC, said in a note that the weak June figure means Canada's economy was entering the third quarter on a low note. Growth for this quarter is tracking between flat and 0.5%, he said. Quote, that weaker than expected trend in monthly figures makes today's release supportive for our forecasts of a September rate cut, said Grantham, though he added that upcoming inflation and jobs data for August will also have a say in the Bank of Canada's decision. Reitzes was less convinced that the Q2 GDP print will sway the Bank of Canada in any direction, given that the central bank opted to pause at its last rate decision and its forecasts for the economy are broadly coming in as expected. Financial market odds of a quarter point cut from the Bank of Canada next month sat just below 50% midday Friday, according to LSEG data and analytics. Jansen said that RBC is maintaining its call for no further interest rate cuts at this juncture. Inflation continues to come in a bit hotter than the central bank's liking, he noted, which is likely to keep the central bank from wanting to lower its policy rate. And with economic weakness concentrated in trade exposed sectors, Jansen argued more targeted relief from government in the form of fiscal policy is better suited to address pain points than the broadness of monetary policy. As we often say, monetary policy is a very, very, very blunt tool. And of course, the Bank of Canada does have a primary mandate of using it to keep inflation between 0 and 3% and as close to the 2% target. You know, when you are using that blunt instrument of interest rates, and also when you consider that it takes about a year to two for interest rates to work itself through the economy. So some of the cuts that started being made last March, right? When we had those 5, I think, rate cuts it was, or 7 in a relatively short period of time, when we went from 5 to 2.75%. Those are currently working their way through the system right now to stimulate the economy. Let's see. What else do we have here? According to John McFarlane, who's a senior reporter for Canada, for Yahoo Finance Canada here. Let's see if there's anything else in his thing. Says that markets quickly reacted with Canadian bond yields slipping and the loonie weakening as investors priced in a greater chance of a rate cut, as we mentioned earlier in the first article that we read here. Analysts had expected 0.5 annualized decline, which is what I mentioned as well. All right, let's see, what else do we have? Travel services fell 11.1% during the quarter as well. So not just passenger car and light truck exports, which were down 24.7%, and industrial machinery and equipment 18.5%, but also travel services. Quote, simply put, the tariff war with the U.S. was terrible for the Canadian economy, Desjardins Group economist Royce Mendes wrote in a note. I think that's what we have here. Again, Andrew Grantham of CIBC, quote, we continue to think that a couple more interest rate cuts from the Bank of Canada are needed to accelerate the recovery. And that should be the case unless jobs data due on September 5th is surprisingly strong. Then that might moderate that. Let's see, what else do we have? According to Mendes of Desjardins, who we had mentioned earlier here, the domestic economy is not collapsing even if overall output contracted. He noted that easing tensions with the U.S. have diminished tail risks for Canada while also reducing concerns about tariff-driven inflation at the Bank of Canada. He also argued that the softer monthly momentum makes the release supportive for our forecast of a September interest rate cut. TD economist Richie Sondy stressed that consumer spending made, quote, a massive contribution to growth in the quarter, rising at 4.5% annualized pace. He said the data quote, fell almost exactly in line with what the Bank of Canada expected in their latest forecast, suggesting the Bank of Canada may choose to hold rates steady in September. But with wage growth slowing and economic slack building, Sondhi added that, quote, further downward pressure on inflation could pave the way for more rate cuts this year. Scotiabank's Derek Holt took a more hawkish view, arguing the headline contraction masked an economy, quote, that ripped higher in areas like consumer spending and housing, with overall domestic activity rising 3.4% at an annualized pace. Quote, easing on the back of strong final, sorry, let's try that again. Easing on the back of strong final domestic demand would be a policy mistake, Holt wrote, pointing to surging consumer spending and housing as evidence the effects of past cuts are still working through the system. While trade and investment were the main factors slowing the economy, household demand provided an offset, rising by 1.1% in the quarter, led by purchases of trucks, vans, and SUVs, insurance, and financial services. So, again, trucks, vans, and SUVs, large dollar purchases that are being made maybe earlier than people had planned to so that they can avoid the impacts of further tariffs. Retail trade hit a record high in June, rising 1.4%. So that is interesting to go along with the housing numbers. With that, construction went up by 1.5%. We have retail also climbing, so record high in June. So that's always positive. Um, However, underlying momentum was mixed. Wage growth was anemic at just 0.2%, as we mentioned, the smallest increase since the second quarter of 2016 outside the pandemic, Statistic Canada says. And as we mentioned, about this household savings rate, which had dropped to 5% from 6%. Um, and then, of course, overall, if we're talking about federal finances, they also weakened, quote, as excise taxes fell sharply following the removal of the federal consumer carbon tax. So the federal government has fewer dollars as well in its pocket as a result of giving up some revenue. So that is the main data that we have from Friday with regard to the quarterly numbers. But we also got some information, I think it is yesterday or maybe the day before, with regard to another metric that we often look at. And I have no idea why that is what appeared, because that is definitely not the article that I am looking for. Something copied and pasted incorrectly. Uh, but what I was looking for was the trade deficit numbers. Talking about the balance of trade here, the difference between the monetary value of a nation's exports and imports of goods over a certain period of time. So in this case, and this was news from 18 hours ago, our trade deficit has shrunk to 4.9 billion in July as energy vehicle exports rise. So as we mentioned here in all this data uh, that we got up until last Friday, talking about the auto sector, talking about a dip in vehicle exports. But in July, as we mentioned, they started noticing a bit of a turnaround. And then this, according to our July numbers, so that are outside of Q2, this is beginning of Q3 data, shows that our trade deficit has been shrinking and uh, energy and vehicle exports are on the rise. So this is according to Thomson Reuters, a news service. Canada's trade deficit narrowed in July as overall exports rose, especially driven by outbound shipments of crude oil and passenger cars to its biggest trading partner, the United States, Statistics Canada said on Thursday. So, thus putting the lie to Donald Trump's claim that Canada doesn't have anything we need. Its merchandise trade deficit, or deficit from trading goods, in July was at 4.94 billion, smaller than last month's 5.98 billion, but much higher than the same period last year, according to Statistics Canada data. So while we are feeling impacts compared to last year, before we had this trade war, during the course of this trade war, from June to July, we've taken a full $1 billion off our trade deficit. That's good. Overall exports rose by 0.9% to 61.86 billion in July, while imports slowed 0.7% to 66.8 billion, the agency said. So that is good. Um, and there's a graph that we have here also that I'm going to show you. Analysts polled by Reuters had forecast the trade deficit for July at 4.75 billion percent. $4.75 billion. So we missed that by a little bit. We came in at 4.94. So, yeah, uh, slightly higher in this case. This was the sixth consecutive trade deficit since US President Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canada, but it has been improving from an all-time record deficit of 7.6 billion observed in April. So we had a trade deficit of $7.6 billion in April, the month that Liberation Day allegedly was announced. Don't have data for May here at the moment, but then that dropped to 5.98 billion in June, and now it's 4.94 billion in July. So we took that big first sharp hit, and we are slowly and surely adjusting as we go along. This is something I mentioned a while ago when they were talking about these types of things, when we're looking at our exports versus imports, and we saw that imports to United States were going down, but imports to other countries around the world were going up, but they weren't going up as quickly as our exports to the United States were going down. And we said that that would probably take some time because we have to negotiate the new deals. In certain places, we might have to establish some legal architecture to be able to have export coming. In certain places, we might have to do some infrastructure builds that are required to reroute trade to different parts. So that we're already seeing some progress here in our exports going to countries other than the United States, but we wouldn't be able to make up that whole difference on an equivalent month by month basis because there's still some work we need to do to get our exports flowing to other nations. But the hits that were taken from the United States are hopefully one time hits that could last and permeate through the economy. Whereas as we sign more and more and more and more deals over the months and years ahead, that number in terms of Canadian exports going to markets other than the United States can keep growing gradually or substantively or at different rates for all intents and purposes for a long time to come, because the United States is a market of about like 362 million people, and then there's the rest of the whole world. So there is a lot more untapped potential for us. So it is possible that we could replace our trade with the United States with trade with other nations over a very long and sustained period of time. But obviously, we are feeling the deep, sharp impact of reduced trade with the United States immediately, given the very drastic and disruptive measures that the President of the United States is currently taking. Back to the article here. Trump's threats and subsequent tariffs on imports from Canada have forced many businesses to alter their supply chains and seek markets elsewhere. This has this has disturbed the trade balance between the two countries, pushing Canada into a trade deficit. But exports to the US, which was the destination for 76% of Canada's total good exports last year, have been on an upswing for the last 3 months on a monthly basis. Canada exported more crude oil and passenger cars to the US in July, pushing its exports up 5%, but but on a year-on-year basis, exports south of the border were still down more than 10%. Exports of energy products specifically posted an increase in July of 4.2%, and exports of motor vehicles and parts increased 6.6%, StatsCan said, adding that lower exports of metal and non-metallic mineral products partially offset the overall increase in exports in July. Exports of aluminium and steel, which both have 50% tariffs, dropped a respective 30% and 25% in July. And that's where you can see where those sectoral tariffs are causing a lot of damage, right? I mean, 30% drop in exports of aluminium and 25% drop in exports of steel in 1 month only. You can't replace that quickly. So that's why we're talking about sectoral supports for certain sectors, because they're taking very drastic hits. The July statistics weren't, quote, as bad as feared, said Shelley Kaushik, senior economist at BMO Capital Markets, despite recent trade blows, especially to specific industries. Quote, the economy is doing fairly well. It's just there are specific sectors that are quite heavily impacted by this trade war. And I think that's what we're seeing in the trade data, but also in the broader economic data writ large. However, economists caution that exports haven't fully recovered. Quote, we haven't completely reversed that trend yet, said Ross Pruzakowski, deputy chief economist at Export Development Canada, adding that the bounce in energy and autos was due to the significant lows seen in the previous months. Exports to the US are down 2.9% in the first 7 months of this year compared with the same period 2024, and exports to the rest of the world are up 14%, he said. Prusakowski said the knock-on effects of tariffs are still playing out and will be seen in economic data in the coming months. So again, you're looking at the numbers down 2.9%, up 14%. Yes, but again, our exports, the 14% increase to exports to the rest of the world still don't make up for the increase of 2.9% to the US, even though the numbers, those top line numbers are wildly different because their percentages, so they're based on the total amount of trade that was taking place prior to that. And obviously, given that 70% of our exports were going to the United States, well, 3% of 76% is more than 14% of 24%, if you're sitting there and doing the math. So we're not making it up, but the fact that exports to the rest of the world are up 14% is a very positive sign that what we're doing is working and that we're able to increase exports to the rest of the world 14% in such a short period of time shows just how nimble our economy is. I think I mentioned in a previous show that one of the advantages that Canada has in this situation over pretty much any other country in the world is that we have these 15 free trade agreements that cover 51 different nations, but we just haven't maximized them. But the fact that the legal architecture is already there makes it very, very easy for us to be nimble and say, oh, wait a minute, we can't send our steel over here. Hey, any one of these 51 countries that we're dealing with, do you need our steel for anything? Yeah, okay, done, rerouted, because we don't have to go there and negotiate the legal architecture in order to do that. That work has already been done. So the fact that our economy is very nimble and it is easy for us to reroute trade uh, makes it such that we are probably the country in the world that's best able to defend itself from what it is that Trump is trying to do to us. But again, as we mentioned, if we're going to do that, then we do need to increase our capacity to export. And that's where you're going to see with C5 and some of the first projects that are announced, particularly around ports, in increasing our capacity to actually get products out of Canada going to other places. So it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if a lot of the first initial projects have to do with that. Rail, roads, ports, uh, you know, um, anything that can help us increase that trade, particularly ports again because of that deal with Mexico as well, that we're going to be shipping seaport to seaport a whole lot more rather than going through trucks and rail through the United States in order to get our trade done with them. So that and of course hopefully increasing our trade with Mexico as a result as well, because it is a market of 200 million people, and, and you know we have a free trade agreement, so we should be much better friends than we are. Exports to countries other than the United States were down 8.6% in July, a second consecutive monthly decline, and imports from other countries, excluding the US, increased 1.3%. So we're actually importing more from countries that are not the United States as well. So when we're talking about how we have this boycott of the United States, we yes, we are exporting less from the United States, but we're also importing less from the United States and choosing to import from other places. On the flip side, from the imports from the US continued to fall and dropped 2.2% in July. Yay. The Canadian dollar was trading down 0.21%, worth 72.34 cents after the trade data was released. Bond yields on the government's 2-year bonds improved and were down 0.1 basis points, down to 2.61%. So again, more economic data coming and reducing our bond yield rather than increasing it, which is again positive, shows the strength of our economy in the eyes of world markets. The recent GDP data, which showed that the economy contracted by 1.6%, has led money markets to bet that a rate cut by the central bank is coming. Now, as we mentioned in the previous article, it had increased from 40 to 48% with the data from Q2. With this data on trade deficits, markets are now betting on an almost 70% chance of a rate cut on September 17th. So again, we still have that data from August to come in yet, which could affect that. But just these two data points alone have increased the market's expectations for a rate cut on September 17th from 40% to 70%, which certainly will not be objected to by many of the Canadians who will be renewing their mortgages over the course of the next 12 to 24 months. We are in that boat. By the time August of next year comes around, we will have to renew our mortgage, and it will definitely be renewed at a higher rate than we got it, because when we bought, we were in the second or third year of COVID, when interest rates were ridiculously low. I think the Bank of Canada rate at that time was 0.25%. We got a little nervous when it went up to 5, because we knew we would have to renew at some point, but now that's down back to 2.75. And if it goes down to 2.5, and a lot of people are expecting to 2.25% by the end of the year, that's been the forecast for the better part of the last year, even though the rate cuts did stop sometime a few months ago. People were always saying that there might be two more in store for this year. It's just when they would come. So if September 17th is one, then they would have the whole rest of the year for another one. So it seems that that initial prediction could indeed hold true by the time 2025 is over. So there you go. A lot of economic data coming up, but and it's a bit messy, because the economic data that we're reading now is not like the typical reports. Again, when trade flows are particularly even, and there's not some major disruptive force throwing everything into turmoil or creating spikes in terms of production or inventories and that type of stuff. But even with all the turmoil, it seems, and some broadly and widely swinging numbers as a result of that, it seems that overall, it seems that we are stable and handling things well. We are taking a hit, but the hit isn't as big as everybody was expected. The impacts aren't as big as everybody has expected. There doesn't seem to be a contagion effect from the hardest hit sectors into the other ones at the moment. Employment is affected, but again, not as drastically. And, a lot of people are of the mind that whatever turmoil that we are going through at the moment, it is not severe enough that it would necessarily need to be handled, again, by the blunt instrument of cutting interest rates, that sectoral supports and government supports of kind might actually be more appropriate. And to that effect, we hear that today, that Prime Minister Mark Carney will be making a significant announcement, and a lot of people are expecting that it will probably have something to do with supports for most affected industries. So another round of um, government supports for in affected sectors, particularly workers, maybe more training programs, maybe more things like they did with steel, some raising of some duties from steels that comes from markets with which we do not have a free trade agreement. For example, there could be those types of moves as well to try to uh, incentivize Canadian companies to buy more Canadian product, or to alter to buy Canadian product for what it is that they do, rather than importing from elsewhere, by making those imports a little more expensive, and thus relatively Canadian products more attractive. So there's lots of levers that we can pull. And again, because we have a central banker as prime minister, we have someone who might be able to understand those levers and what happens when you pull them, and maybe how hard you need to pull them given what can happen, or how hard not to pull them at certain times, given all of that. So if we have confidence that we do have the right person in the job who understands the mechanics of all of this, it seems that for everything that has been attempted to be imposed on us, we are still doing well overall as a country. But again, as we mentioned before, in many other data, for example, when we were looking at the ability of Canadians to weather the storm, right? When we mentioned we have to look at the top line data, but we also have to look at data like homeowners versus renters, new homeowners versus people who have been homeowners for a while, youth versus more senior Canadians, depending where they are in life and how much income they have. There's a lot of Canadians that are able to weather this fairly well, but there are other Canadians that are being particularly heavily impacted, and therefore we always have to look. We have to at this time in particular, we really need to look at segmented data rather than just overall top line data, because even though most of us or all of us as a whole in general are handling this very well, there are particular demographics and particular sectors that are being uh, rather viciously affected by what is going on. And we do um, have to, we can't let the fact that our personal experience is not as bad render us unempathetic and immune to those in Canada who are having their asses handed to them, because it is happening. So um, we can't be lulled into a sense of security or complacency just because it hasn't affected us personally. There's a lot of our brothers and sisters in the country that are having a very, very tough time as a result of what's going on. And therefore, we must keep our attention on them and our hearts open to them so that um, we don't only seek solutions that are in our personal best interest, but that would be in the interest of the people who are the most effective because or the most affected, because when we take care of them, we also end up taking care of ourselves. All right, moving on to other news. Some of it could be related in terms, because we're talking about trade and economics. Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, and Cody Blois, the Prime Minister's own parliamentary secretary, who was very briefly agricultural minister, I think, in the transition from Trudeau to the election period, are on a trade trip to Asia this weekend. And they particularly, they are going to China because, as you know, um, we don't only have one trade war going on at the moment. We have two, one with the United States and one with China, mostly as a result of the fact that when Joe Biden was the president, the United States had imposed a 100% tariff on electric vehicles coming from China, and Canada in solidarity, and also because our auto industries were so um, uh, inextricably, let's try that again, inextricably intertwined. Say that 5 times fast. That in this case, whatever the United States was doing, we pretty much had to do as well. But then China opened an investigation, and then about a year later came and imposed some tariffs, and we have 100% tariffs on canola meal and canola oil, I think it is, and then a recently announced 75.8% tariff on canola seed, which is, canola is a relatively important uh, agriculture is a big sector, and canola is a particularly important subsegment of that sector in Canada. So, and particularly in Saskatchewan. So, over here we have Premier Scott Moe on Power and Politics yesterday talking to us a little bit about the trade mission. And again, unlike Danielle Smith, who takes every opportunity to badmouth the federal government, and Scott Moe is usually in her pocket following her left, right, and center. But there has been a a slight cleavage, I think is the word. I think I might be saying a French word in English here, but a bit of a fork in the road, a bit of a gap. Uh, there's some daylight emerging between both of them. Now, Scott Moe is not a big fan of the federal government by any stretch of the imagination, but he is more often inclined of late of saying nicer things or not being so negative all the time as Daniel Smith is. So here we go, kits and cubs. We're going to have a little moment here with Premier Scott Moe talking about, in this answer, his counterpart, well, not his counterpart, I should say, but the Prime Minister's Parliamentary Secretary, Cody Blois, who will be going down with him and talking about actually working together to improve things rather than against each other.
Canola's really getting squeezed with that dynamic. But you mentioned that Cody Blois, the Prime Minister's Parliamentary Secretary, for a brief period of time was the Agriculture Minister, but that was only lasted a few weeks, I think. But what do you hope comes of that, having a federal presence with you on the trip? It's not the Prime Minister, but it is the Parliamentary Secretary.
I think the benefit is, certainly there. First, Cody Blois reports definitely to the Prime Minister. Second, he's well regarded as an agriculture minister by many of the producers and farm groups that I've spoken to here in Saskatchewan and across the prairies. And lastly, and I think most importantly, to have a federal official along on this, initial engagement mission in China is going to help bring that broader trade conversation forward sooner rather than later. And as I said, that's my goal on behalf of not only the canola industry, but the pulse tariffs we're facing, pork tariffs, and as Canadian, I think in fairness to seafood tariffs as well. So having Cody Blois along, I think, is going to accelerate and advance the broader trade conversation between Canada and China. So that's a positive, and I'm gracious for it.
Now you mentioned. Sorry, not you mentioned. You'll notice that Scott Moe also mentioned that there are tariffs on pork, tariffs on pulses, and of course tariffs on seafood, which doesn't affect Saskatchewan specifically, but they're there, and those are also tariffs that China has imposed on us in retaliation for the EV tariffs. So canola is getting all of the attention pretty much in the press, but pork, pulses, and seafood have also been affected by those. And there will certainly, while Scott Moe might be there to speak specifically about pork pulses and canola, that Cody Blois will probably be trying to open the door for some type of arrangement on seafood as well, because that's very particularly important to the Atlantic Canadian provinces who have taken a rather big hit with that. I'm not sure how it's affecting British Columbia specifically, but I haven't heard too much about that, but I have seen several reports of how it affects Atlantic Canada, and also some comments from the kids in our chat who live out in that region and have been mentioning it as well. Now, Scott Moe, in this interview, does go on to speak about whether or not the EV tariffs do indeed need to go, given the context.
The EV tariffs, just to circle back to that if I can, Premier, I mean, do they need to go for this to get resolved? It feels like that's what China will probably want to see. I mean, is there any sense from the feds that they would be willing to contemplate this? Because you're risk-provoking the United States if you do that, right?
Yeah, therein lies the risk. So the easy answer is, yes, certainly they need to go. But then the risk of that is that we actually have challenges with our largest destination, which is the United States of America. And so I know Minister LeBlanc is, working hard and diligent in Washington, D.C. with his counterpart, Secretary Lutnick, and likely Secretary Greer as well. We need both markets. We need to continue to have access to the U.S. market for, the entirety of Canadian exports as we move forward in order to have that strong North American economy. But we, in Saskatchewan, we export to actually over 160 countries around the world. Our second largest canola market is China. And at the end of the day, we need them both. And so that's the, the great dance that we have to perform as Canadians, and we're doing our level best as a subnational leader to support our Canadian government in ensuring that we can get to the very best place that we can in multiple nations all at the same time.
I know you're not overselling the potential outcome of this meeting, like you're not going to be standing there.
All right, kits and cubs. So you will notice in these two answers from Scott Moe, one, he is willing to show and speak kindly of a member of the Liberal government, Cody Blois, and doesn't adopt an antagonistic position with regard to him being on the trade trip, and actually talks about how it could be beneficial to have him there. And then in the second answer, you will notice how Scott Moe, which is something I'm not used to from him, is actually talking in nuance here rather than saying, oh, well, everything is terrible or everything's good, talking about the dance that we have, right? We have these increased tariffs from China because we did something to coordinate with the United States, who at the time was our largest and most dependable trading partner. Now it's our largest trading partner, but least dependable one. And, so we did that to be in support of them. And now we've had blowback from China as a result, which means that, the EV tariffs should probably come off if we want to do what we need to do to have those other tariffs removed from other Canadian agricultural and food related industries. But if we do that, then that could be seen as a provocation by Trump and then lead to other further retaliation against us from the United States. So we're kind of stuck in the middle between our two largest trading partners, because who are at war with each other on a trade war. And we have to try to decide which side our bread is buttered on. And, just the size of our trade with the United States, 76% of our exports go in there, means such that it's kind of obvious on which side our bread is buttered. However, it probably would be in our interest to reduce some of those, if not 100%, reduce some of those tariffs on the EV vehicles, not so much so that it would create a market for them to come into Canada and make it harder for us to produce our own vehicles. But it might not need to be 100%, but a way to show some give there in order to hopefully get some give on those exports. But how much could we do that before getting hit with the United States? Is that 25%? Is it 50%? Would even 5% set Trump off and have him unleash holy hell? We don't know. And that's the position that Prime Minister Mark Carney is on that in the moment. And again, it's not a position I envy him. It's not a situation I would wish on my own worst enemy. It's a seemingly no-win situation whatsoever. And it's just interesting to watch Scott Moe acknowledge that that's the case and being real about it, rather than saying, well, I don't care how hard it is. It's your job to get it done. Do it. Which would be a Danielle Smith position and manner of taking that argument and trying to be as unhelpful as possible. So that's what I'm seeing here. This a little bit of daylight between Scott Moe and Danielle Smith, that he has never been afraid to be belligerent. But he seems to be pumping his brakes a little more than Alberta, the Premier of Alberta is, and the government of Alberta is in this particular moment. So, which is always interesting to see as a dynamic. Any daylight between Danielle Smith and Scott Moe is something that we should pay attention to, because it could be a sign of something. Now, in this question here, this like the meeting between Minister Anita Anand and Francois Philippe Champagne, I believe it is, when they went to Mexico to talk to high-level officials there, including the president of Mexico, which set the stage for a later meeting that is going to come between the president of Mexico and the prime minister of Canada, a one-on-one. Is there a need here for Canada and China to have a one-on-one between their leaders? So let's go back to the interview and see what Scott Moe has to say on whether or not Prime Minister Carney, in his estimation, would have to go to China.
I know you're not overselling the potential outcome of this meeting, like you're not going to be standing there with President Xi and signing a trade agreement. I don't suspect. And this is in no way to diminish the importance of the role of the Premier of Saskatchewan, but does the Prime Minister of Canada, does Mark Carney need to go to China for these issues to be resolved, do you think?
Yes, at the appropriate time. And I've spoken with the Prime Minister as well as others elected and unelected in the federal government. And there will be a time for us to have our Prime Minister Carney and President Xi hopefully coming to an agreement, not just in the canola or the agri-food space, but coming to an agreement on what the future trade relationship looks like between Canada and China. And again, I just say if we're going to truly diversify additional production to other countries around the world, that means Europe, that means India, that means China, that means many other countries around the world. And so, I've seen Prime Minister Carney greatly elevate his engagement, and I would say the Canadian reputation internationally, it includes with companies like China. But my goodness, there's a lot going on if you look at just what's happened in the past week internationally. And so it is going to take some hard work, some heavy lifting and some engagement. There'll be a time for that. And I'll be seeing Prime Minister Carney on my return to discuss just those opportunities.
So again, Scott Moe, keeping it real. And stating here, like, my God, there's a lot going on. That's an understatement. But that the Prime Minister will indeed have to go and attend and meet with his counterpart in China. Now, to that effect, because you have a Pierre Poilievre rerun in the background, sniping from the sidelines, saying, nothing's been done, nothing's been done. Well, on June 5th, there was a readout from the PMO, Prime Minister of Canada, after having spoken with the Premier of China, Li Qiang, I believe it is. And there they said the leaders exchanged views on bilateral relations, including the importance of engagement, and agreed to regularize channels of communication between Canada and China. The leaders also discussed trade between the two countries. They welcomed their trade ministers' meeting this week, during which Canada and China agreed to convene the Joint Economic and Trade Commission, or the JETC, at an early date to address outstanding trade issues. Prime Minister Carney took the opportunity to raise trade irritants affecting agriculture and agri-food products, including canola and seafood, as well as other issues with Premier Li. The leaders took note of recent bilateral engagement on fentanyl and other opioids and committed their governments to working together to address the fentanyl crisis. Again, one of the things that has Donald Trump establishing tariffs on Canada and Mexico, but also China, those specific tariffs on fentanyl, which were deemed ruled illegal by that appeal court in the United States, confirming the decision of the Court on International Trade in the United States. Canada, Mexico, and China got affected by those ones. So Canada and China working together here to see if there's anything that we can do more to address the so-called fentanyl crisis in a combined way that could lead the United States to drop or reduce some of those tariffs. But this happened in June, and again, they agreed to convene the Joint Economic and Trade Commission, which is the body at which we normally sit together to discuss these types of things, that had gone inactive for a while. So this is to regenerate it. And it seems that when they said to convene at the Joint Economic and Trade Commission at an early date, well, it would seem that early date was from was August 26th, because according here, and I see this on Facebook, to the official account of the Ministry of Commerce of the People's Republic of China. So this is how China saw this meeting. They said the 28th meeting of the China-Canada Joint Economy and Trade Commission was held in Ottawa. On August 26, 2025, the 28th meeting was held in Ottawa, Canada, co-chaired by Li Qianjiang, China's international trade representative and Vice Minister of Commerce, and let's try that again. Co-chaired by Li Qianjiang, China's international trade representative and Vice Minister of Commerce, and Rob Stewart, Deputy Minister of International Trade and Global Affairs Canada. The two sides engaged in candid, practical, and constructive discussions on improving and developing bilateral economic and trade relations, properly addressing each other's economic, trade, and concerns, and advancing pragmatic economic and trade cooperation. Li Qianjiang noted that this meeting represents an important step to implement the consensus reached during the phone call between China's premier and Canada's prime minister. He acknowledged the thorough preparatory work carried out by the two working teams for the meeting. During the session, the two sides explored concrete pathways to enhance economic and trade relations under the new circumstances in a spirit of mutual respect and win-win outcomes. The Chinese side stands ready to work with Canada to leverage the 55th anniversary of diplomatic relations and the 20th anniversary of the strategic partnerships as opportunities to manage differences, address respective economic and trade concerns, and jointly expand cooperation areas through constructive approaches and pragmatic actions. The two sides agreed to continue leveraging the JETC mechanism and through follow-up communications to accumulate positive outcomes in the economic and trade field and promote the healthy, stable, and sustainable development of Canada-China economic trade relations. And there we go. Just show you a little image here of Mr. Qianjiang and Mr. Stewart meeting, shaking hands, posing for pictures, all that good stuff. So yeah, while Pierre is complaining that absolutely nothing is happening and nothing is being done, phone calls are happening, preparatory work is happening. This is according to even the government of China, who doesn't see us in the most friendly light at the moment, acknowledging that there's been lots of work, good work, productive work, practical work, and that, well, I mean, considering what China has been saying about us lately, that's a positively glowing review of that meeting that took place, which I'm not sure I'm equipped to know what to do with, considering China's very hostile stance towards us pretty much for the last 10 years. It's kind of interesting to see that written in, I mean, there was nothing antagonistic at all in that interpretation of how that meeting went down. And this is again from an official account from China. So hopefully that means that there are positive signs because, I mean, I'm pretty sure, as we mentioned often on this show, as infuriating as dealing with China can be, and it is infuriating because, you know, China is as China is. Within what it is that they do and that to which they aspire, they are rational actors. Now, what they do and to which they aspire are probably not things that, you know, we would do and we would aspire to. But in the framework that in which they are operating, what they do makes sense. If you can put yourself in their shoes, you can pretty much predict what the next move will be or what the next statement will be with fairly reasonable accuracy. It's not like they come up and surprise us and come up with things that are completely out of left field, given what we know to be true of them, unlike the United States of late. So, I am pretty sure that just as we are caught between China and the United States, given this, China is also rather very well aware that we are as well. And given that China has a 50% tariff rate going on with the United States, is it 50 or 25? I can't remember now off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. I would need to double check that, but I know it's at least 25. I know India has 50. I'm just not remembering off the top of my head if the United States was as bold as to impose the other 25% on China for buying oil from Russia like they did to India. Because, well, I mean, United States and Russia trade war is a little different than the United States and India trade war. United States has way more leverage on the second one with India than they do with China. You know, mostly because, well, China produces a lot more things that the United States does desperately need. Semiconductors and rare earths and all that type of stuff. So they can't cut off their noses to spite their faces as much when it comes to China as they could with India. It's just the realities of the trade flows at the moment. So yeah, really interesting stuff here to note that how things are progressing here. Now, in this last answer, Premier Mo was talking about C5 specifically and special projects and how they affect Saskatchewan. And again, unlike Danielle Smith, who I have to give credit, has been saying some supportive things and expressing some optimism, but that woman is poison. So even when she says that, there's always one or two words in there that get slid in. That's, yeah, there she is. There's the hateful little one again. Scott Moe, again, showing a little more optimism, not being in attack mode as much as Danielle is. So we're going to show this to you again because I love daylight.
So just as a final point, I know you spent a lot of time talking with the Prime Minister and your colleagues at the First Minister's table about major projects and national projects. Parliament's due back in about 10 days. Sometime between now and then, we're probably going to get that first tranche of national projects coming out of this Build Canada initiative. What's your expectations there? I mean, you've got a bit of a smile on your face. You're expecting good news for Saskatchewan, you're expecting good news for the West. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, I hope there's good news for Canada, where many of our projects are actually not only good for Saskatchewan, but are good for the entirety of our nation, or a good part of our nation. Same is true for projects that are approved in other provinces. And it is time for us to get back to truly being Canadian, and that needs to be led by the federal government. We're going to have a number of projects on that list. In fact, every project that has any federal touch is a priority for our province, whether it's $1 million or $1 billion, to find its way through C5, which is that piece of legislation that's finding a path through a very difficult regulatory environment that has been formed over the course of the past decade. So it's our hope that any and all projects are able to find their way through C5 to be truly beneficial for all people, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, and all people from coast to coast to coast in Canada. This is one of the things we can determine is what we are actually going to and how we are going to increase our production and where that product is going to go. Existing supply chains are difficult to change and alter. But new production, we can determine our own destiny when it comes to new production. So I'm pretty bullish on the future of our province and the future of Canada, but there's some action that needs to happen. There's been some great words by a new Prime Minister and a renewed Liberal government, but it's time for the rubber to hit the road, so to speak.
Okay.
And there you go, kits and cubs. Premier Scott Moe actually saying a couple of things that are supportive of the Prime Minister and that back the Prime Minister up. So, a lot of comments in there with regard to what, the things that we can control and the things that we can't control, and focusing on the things that we can. How trade routes are, trade patterns and established trade is a little difficult to reroute, but taking on new trade or finding new partners is a little easier to integrate. All these types of things, being bullish on the economy of Saskatchewan and the future of Canada. These are all things that the Prime Minister is saying, and that in this case, the Premier of Saskatchewan seems to be echoing in his own way with his comments, which again, night and day with Danielle Smith. And as an example of this, I'd like to not bring you something that Danielle Smith has to say right now, but this is prompted by something posted by Sean O'Shea of Global News, who says, born and raised Albertan here, Ontario, the past 38 years, I covered Joe Clark as a Cub radio reporter. Peter Lougheed was my MLA premier. I reported a story in Chinatown in Calgary alongside an older Ralph Klein when he was a TV reporter at CFCN before he became mayor and then premier. It was never this cynical or mean-spirited. Tough, always, but not like this. When he's talking about the current mood coming in from Alberta. And there's a lady named Linda Steele, who identifies herself as a broadcaster, storyteller, media trainer, and performance coach, former TV news anchor, consumer, investigator, radio talk show host, and a lifelong Oilers fan, of course. And she says, "Oh, Alberta, I've only been gone 14 years and I hardly recognize you anymore." And she was recently on Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson. And she had this to say when she's talking about the manner in which likes to do politics.
I am the biggest supporter of Alberta, but some of the stuff that's going on these days is making me really look and go, what the hell? It is very MAGA light. It seems unnecessary. It seems like stirring the pot to keep people in this sort of perpetual rage. I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't understand it. I have voted right across the spectrum, voted conservative many times, actually, but I don't recognize this version of conservatism. When I was a kid, like growing up in Hinton, Alberta, I remember seeing Joe Clark standing on our doorstep, Peter Lougheed, Ralph Klein, Don Getty, Jim Prentice, and now we've got this version. I just don't get it. I don't think that it is necessary to be unkind, stir the pot, to get people at each other's throats. What is going on with this fixation about books and about transgender people? I thought Danielle Smith was super concerned about the economy.
Yeah, exactly. We thought that Danielle Smith was super concerned with the economy, but all she seems to be doing is sabotaging it based on what she did to the renewables industry, seems to want to bring coal back, can speak of nothing other than pipelines. And again, how Ottawa is always terrible, evil, nasty, use whatever expression that you want, but that Ottawa is always the problem and the roadblock to the aspirations of Alberta. Now, Danielle Smith, being her usual helpful self, released a 9-minute video that I'm not going to subject you to. But where we have Scott Moe saying, I am bullish about the future of Canada, here we have disloyal, duplicitous, all the words, deadbeat Danny, doing her usual thing, injecting more poison into debate. So she's got this whole video here, but I'm just going to read her tweet rather, because I'm not going to show her the propaganda videos, because if we go by anything that has been put forward by the Alberta Next panel, we know that this is all crap. So, and of course, you can see her. You can see her here if you're watching the visual. Her with her usual sort of look that she's going to try and use her media training skills to make the most absurd things sound, but perfectly and totally reasonable. But they're not. But she writes, Canada has become economically weak and vulnerable to the whims of our largest export market, and Ottawa continues to dither. Compare and contrast with what Scott Moe was just saying. Parliament could do 3 things today that would immediately turn our economy around, create hundreds of thousands of jobs, and generate trillions in wealth for Canadians without spending a single tax dollar. 1, scrap oil and gas production cap. There is no production cap. Again, she keeps on talking about equalization, and she keeps on talking about production caps. These things do not exist. Alberta does not write transfer checks to any other province. And as we said yesterday, please show us a line item in the budget or a receipt for a bank transfer to any other province from Alberta. Show us. SCAP oil and gas production cap. There is no production cap. There is an emissions cap. If you do what you do or what you're supposed to do to reduce carbon intensity. Remember when we were talking about that under Stephen Harper all the time? Reducing carbon intensity. If you do what you need to do to reduce carbon intensity, you can produce more. If you're not willing to lift a damn finger to reduce the intensity of carbon from your activities, well then yes, of course, there will be a production cap, but it's you who will have imposed it on yourself for being too lazy to do the damn work. Just do the damn work and you will be able to produce more. Overhaul no new pipelines law. There is no new pipelines law. In fact, there has been a pipeline, although a small one, built under that law specifically. And again, we have a pipeline to Tidewater for both LNG and oil because of the Liberal government, not a conservative one. I don't know what she's talking about. And eliminate the tanker ban. There is no tanker ban. We have tankers that have just started moving from Kitimat. Now, the higher point in Prince Rupert area, I think, where she wants that other LNG pipeline, there is some issues with tankers there, given the navigation route and the potential for environmental disaster. But there is no overall tanker ban. The three things that she says exist do not exist. And these are the same things that she has been yammering on again and again and again and again. And it's the same things that Pierre Poilievre is yammering on again and again and again. Pierre Poilievre's policy and Danielle's policy are one and the same. She is basically writing Pierre Poilievre's policy now. She continues, the national economic self-sabotage has to stop. Canadian deserves leaders in Ottawa with the courage to unleash our full potential, restore prosperity, and make our country strong again. We can do this. So I am taking this as a confession that Danielle Smith is nowhere near finding that proponent that she promised us she would have in a matter of weeks, and is now trying to find a way to blame this on Mark Carney. Well, gee, I would have found you a proponent, but you didn't eliminate these three laws. You didn't do that, so I can't find you one. It's your fault. This is what she's setting up the stage for. She doesn't have a proponent because she herself is fueling economic instability in the province, and investment dollars do not want to go to unstable jurisdictions. And she is leading the most unstable jurisdiction in all of Canada. And she is showing no signs of wanting to bring stability to it. She is still fighting Ottawa more than she is fighting the United States. And until she stops that, she is not going to find a proponent. Nobody is going to invest in that pipeline that she wants if they are not certain that that pipeline, once it is built, is going to exist in the country of Canada. It is not going to happen. She needs to change. She needs to put an end, again, to her either intellectual insufficiency or ethical. I will not use the word that I have in mind at the moment to describe her ethics. But she needs to can that. And she really needs to start rowing in the same direction as the rest of the team, or there is going to be nothing for her. It's just not going to happen. And it's going to be her own damn fault. No matter how much she likes to point the blame at everybody else. Take every single Albertan, point them in the direction of the person to blame, say blame him, and give them a gun, and hope that they will fire, a political gun, and hope that they will fire. She is the problem here. She is clearly the problem. Even Scott Moe is trying to find daylight with her. She is the problem. And on that, a little aside, for Danielle Smith when it comes to talking about such matters. Because again, right, as she mentioned, she said that she would have that final report in a not a final report. What am I talking about? I got tied up in my words here. That she would have that proponent in a couple of weeks. Well, we were talking about her book ban, right? And the people, our good friends from the Breakdown, Alberta, had this to state about Danielle's promises on timelines. Remember on Tuesday when Danielle Smith said rewriting her book ban would only take a couple of hours? Looks at watch in Thursday. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's because Danielle Smith is trying to find a way out of the pretzel she baked for herself. How to ban allegedly pornographic images, but not text, because she seemingly now believes that written smut, especially the Anne Kind variety, is okay for kids. Oh, what a tangled web she has weaved. I'll have my revised book ban in a few hours. A few days later, nothing left. I'll have your proponent in a few weeks. A few months later, nothing. She's incompetent. She's incompetent. Because, and I'm watching this video of her, and I'm like talking about Ottawa needs to do these things. Ottawa needs to do these things, and I'm like, oh, shut up. Considering that you've had to reverse yourself 3 times over the past few weeks, twice in situations after which you've pretended, I have no idea how my government made this decision. You are very ill-placed, Danielle Smith, at the moment to be advising any other governments on how to be competent. Because, girl, you are a hot mess. Your mind is a disaster. It's an extremely messy place. You need to talk less. You need to talk less. Your suggestions are not helpful. I am so over her. Ugh. Sticks. As we say in French, je l'ai fendu de travers dans le cul. Which I think the English version of that might be she's stuck in my craw. But the French version is a little more salty than that. Oh boy, I tell you. So we have all of that going on. Now, interesting development on trade yesterday. The Project 2025 guy that was supposed to come to the retreat to speak to the liberals there, and I don't know specifically what they were going to talk about because that wasn't made public, but it seems that we got stood up. Yeah. 18 hours ago, according to both the Toronto Star and CTV News, also in the National Post, but we won't read them. Thank you very much, because, well, U.S. hedge fund, and sometimes things are a little biased in the manner that they are treated and written. But yes, it seems the gentleman here, whose name is Kevin Roberts, decided to take a pass. According to Kyle Duggan of the Canadian Press, the head of a controversial right-wing American think tank dropped off the list of speakers who were set to brief Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet behind closed doors on Thursday. Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation, was on the list of speakers tapped to address cabinet during a session about striking a new economic and security relationship with the United States. Roberts' inclusion on the list drew strong criticism online on Wednesday. Just before cabinet ministers were about to address the media Thursday morning, Prime Minister's office said Roberts' team said he would no longer be coming to speak. The PMO offered no reason for Roberts' withdrawal. It seems that there was no reason offered as well by the Heritage Foundation, it saying only that Roberts was unable to attend and would instead be working in Washington on Thursday. Is it possible that Mr. Roberts got a call from a certain orange someone or a sycophant of the certain orange someone and said, fuck no, you're not going? Through an unsigned note sent to media, Carney spokespeople said the Prime Minister and his team will engage in discussions with Roberts and other leading U.S. policy figures soon. The Heritage Foundation is a prominent force in Republican politics and highly influential in the senior ranks of the party. The think tank authored Project 2025, a manifesto of ultra-conservative policy proposals published ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's second administration. And then, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And said, since then, some of the people who contributed to the Project 2025 document have joined the Trump administration, including White House border czar Tom Homan and U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Ambassador Fuckface Peter Hoekstra. And of course, Project 25 proposed ways to block abortion access and gut U.S. civil service. The plan became politically toxic during the 2024 U.S. presidential election campaign and was the target of persistent attacks by Democrats, leading Trump to distance himself from the document during the campaign. But of course, he's been implementing it rather systematically since winning. Supriya Dwivedi, who served as an official in the former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau his office, told the Canadian press on Wednesday evening that Roberts' invitation would offend progressives and was not a good way to rally the troops. Quote, any Liberal government should not be inviting folks to speak to cabinet where literally their goal is to roll back basic rights for gay people and for women, let alone minorities, she said. And I understand that sentiment. However, I have a thought about that I will tell you in a couple of seconds here. Ministers heard from a wide range of speakers during their cabinet retreat on Wednesday and Thursday in Toronto, where they discussed their approach to Trump's trade war and preparations for the coming review of the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement scheduled for next year. When a reporter asked Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne Thursday morning if he felt comfortable with Roberts' participation in the cabinet retreat, the minister said it's good to hear from a range of voices. Quote, listen, we invite different guests to come to our events, he said. We wanted to hear a different perspective. When you invite international guests, sometimes, scheduling issues, things change. Champagne was the only minister who spoke about the invitation to Roberts on Thursday. Now, what Supriya Dwivedi is saying here, and this is a common response. I've seen it all over the web. We shouldn't be inviting this person. Why the hell are we inviting this person? This is a stupid move. We don't need to do it. We don't need to do that. Well, yeah, we do, because yesterday I mentioned it is important to speak to the enemy, right? Maybe we wanted to find out more about what they wanted to do or how they wanted to do that so that we can use that for long view planning, right? So we're better able to preempt such activities in Canada. And then I was thinking about it a little more yesterday, and then another aspect dawned on me when it comes to that. Another reason why we would want to have that person come, and that would be maybe we just want to get a sense of just how far they intend to take this shit. Again, so that we can do some long view planning for what's to come. I mean, the Project 25 document's about 900 pages. We know that there's no fucking way that Donald Trump, who's likely being led by the nose to put the plan in place, read that whole damn thing. And 97.36% of the time, this guy has no freaking idea what the hell he's even thinking. But the people who put the document together do. So that's who you talk to. Now, there are, and again, right, we had the Ray Girl, who sponsors our pod page, say it's definitely something we need to understand. And it's like, and that made me think of what Mark Carney has been saying for a while now. Plan beats no plan, right? Know the enemy. Keep them close. Isn't that part of the art of war? Sun Tzu's Art of War. Somebody had put the specific quote in a tweet the other day that I saw, and I forgot to earmark it because I would have loved to be able to read the actual quote from the Sun Tzu "Know Your Enemy" quotes here. But unfortunately, I do not have it with me. But yes, it would have been a good one to have bookmarked for me because it would have come in handy right about now. But yes, the whole know your enemy part, get it from the horse's mouth. Um, you can't ask Trump what it is that the people from Project 2025 intend. He probably doesn't really know. And anyway, you can't get a straight answer from him. So you go specifically to that. So, you want to do due diligence. You want to get inside the playbook a little bit, get some insight. And then you turn around, and then a lot of people say, well, why can't you just read the document? Just read the document, you'll know what's in it. Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure why anybody would assume that nobody from the government of Canada would have. I don't know why one would assume we haven't already read the document. Somebody, somewhere, has read that document and has reported back. So yes, you can read the document, but as any of us have noticed by trying to interact by text or email, right? The written word is limited. You can only get so much out of it, right? You also have all those intangibles. One of the first things we learn in communication studies, is that the words are not 100% of the message. The words matter, but how they're used, where they're placed, which emphasis is placed on them also matters. And you can only get so much from words from reading them. But then you have all the other intangibles: body language, tone, inflection, changes in pace of speech, the things on which we put emphasis for effect, affect when speaking, facial expressions. All of those things are all elements that contribute to get a fuller sense of the message. And you can only get a real grasp of that from being in the room with those who adhere to the plan. So there's a lot of people. It's like, oh my God, we never should have invited them. What are we doing talking about them? That's not how you bring the troops together. Maybe the purpose was not to bring the troops together. I'm pretty sure we don't invite someone who wrote a document that subscribes to values we do not, that would require terrible things happening to our country that we do not want to happen in order for their plan to work, because we want to get on board with that plan. Because we see talking to that person as a manner to rally the troops or to send a positive signal to vulnerable communities. There has to be another reason. I would assume, given Mark Carney is who he is, that the reason has to be strategic in some way, and some way has to fit in to his mantra of plan beats no plan. Based on what I know to be true of him, based on what we've seen in the public domain, that is where my first assumption would go. It wouldn't go to, oh my God, why are we cavorting with the enemy? Or why are we conspiring with the enemy? Or why are we trying to form ties with the enemy? We're not. Maybe we're just trying to study the enemy better and more up close. So, but he canceled. We got stood up. Maybe the blowback was too intense. Maybe people at Trump headquarters decided, no, hey, wait a minute. This is information we don't want getting out. We don't want them to be able to better prepare. What the hell are you doing down there? Who knows why? But I am pretty certain that the intent of this meeting wasn't so that we could forge closer ties with the Heritage Foundation and start skipping through canola fields hand in hand, singing happy songs together, looking lovingly in each other's eyes. That's a version of reality that I would have a very hard time believing. But we got stood up. So there you go. It is no longer a point. Um, then something else that happened. I'm going to go over time again today. Pierre Poilievre yesterday came out and started his latest attack to divide Canadians from one another, trying to pit youth against immigrants, preaching that we need to can the temporary foreign work program. Just touching on it briefly, and maybe we'll talk about it more on Monday's show. This temporary not youth program, temporary foreign worker program. The temporary foreign worker program that Pierre is talking about here, that he says that we need to eliminate, is the same temporary foreign worker program that his once colleague, Jason Kenney, who now really, 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 really wants his job, reformed and screwed up. And it's the same one of which he personally was responsible when he was Minister of Economic Development or something at the time. Well, during the same time, he claims that he was Minister of Housing when we didn't actually have a Minister of Housing, but he seems to claim that we did. But he was in charge of that program during that time that he was the minister, and he didn't make changes to it then. He didn't call for it to be scrapped then for some reason. Not sure why that is the case. When he was Minister of Employment and Social Development. And that was in 2015. But here we are, 15 years later, and now the program needs to be scrapped, killed, ended, because it is taking jobs away from the kids. Because now that we are in September and all the kids who needed summer jobs are back in school, now Pierre is concerned about summer jobs for kids. Now he says he's got something to offer them. Seems to me that if Pierre really, really, really cared about the youth not being able to find jobs, he would have done something when he was minister about it, or he would have campaigned on it. Just a few months ago, when we had that federal election campaign, Canadians between the ages of 18 and 30, if you happen to be watching this, particularly if you are male, I'm not sure how many viewers we have in that category, but if you happen to be watching, if Pierre had anything for you when it comes to jobs for you, he would have campaigned on them in March and in April. He did not. He's got nothing for you. He's got nothing for you. And on Power and Politics yesterday, there was an interview with Fabien Lange, an economics professor at McGill University, and he told Power and Politics that it's, quote, not plausible that the current spike in youth unemployment would be caused by an increase in temporary foreign workers. So Pierre is blaming blaming immigrants for the bad deal that Canadian youth is getting when it doesn't really have anything to do with immigrants at all. So, Pierre going to the places he loves best in order to be disingenuous. And like I said, hopefully I'll be able to present that interview to you next week so you can look at it. But just shamelessly trying to pit young Canadians against immigrants here with his announcement, and that's going nowhere. However, there is some support for the idea of some type of reform to the foreign worker program that is supported by British Columbia Premier David Eby, who said that the temporary foreign worker program, he said, well, either should be cancelled or significantly reformed. So this is very interesting that Pierre Poilievre is getting some support from an NDP premier on this. Eby said Thursday that one reason the province is facing significant fiscal headwinds is because of very high unemployment rates among young people, which he linked to both the temporary foreign worker program and the international student program. Quote, we can't have an immigration system that outpaces our ability to build schools and housing, and we can't have an immigration program that results in high unemployment, Eby said Thursday, after making an unrelated announcement at a school in Surrey, British Columbia. His remarks came a day after similar comments from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who blamed the program for an employment crisis among young Canadians and called for it to be scrapped. The Premier said BC was willing, quote, to convene provinces that are interested in this issue to have a serious grown-up conversation about immigration in Canada and its impact on critical infrastructure such as housing and schools. Employment and Social Development Canada says the temporary foreign worker program allows Canadian employers to hire foreign workers to fill temporary jobs when qualified Canadians are not available. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business said the calls to scrap the program are deeply misguided, and instead of putting Canadians in jobs, they could put the jobs of Canadians at risk. So here we have the Canadian Federation of Independent Business taking a position that is opposite to that of the Conservative Party of Canada, if you can digest that for a second. Again, the times are making for very interesting bedfellows. Ryan Mitten, the Federation's Director of Legislative Affairs for BC, said in a statement that the temporary foreign worker program was, quote, the last resort that keeps the doors open for many small businesses in the province, especially in rural and remote areas. Quote, without the program, many BC restaurants, farms, and care providers would shut down, which would displace Canadian workers as well, Mitten said. And in Pierre's announcement, of course, he made an exception for agricultural workers, though. We need to kill the temporary foreign worker program, except for agricultural. It's not true that there's no Canadians that will take these jobs, except for the agricultural ones. Kids don't want to pick fruit or vegetables. He said adjustments to the program could be made, but canceling it altogether puts politics ahead of sensible policy. BC's youth unemployment rate for people aged 15 to 24 was 12.1% in July, below the Canadian rate of 14.6%, Statistics Canada figures show. A 2024 report by Food Banks BC, which represents more than 100 food relief organizations in the province, found a, quote, significant increase in the number of immigrant or refugee clients to the food banks, as well as women and those in racialized communities. The report said 26% of food bank users identified as immigrants or refugees, with the figure rising to 39% in the Vancouver coastal region. The report did not identify whether users were temporary foreign workers. Poilievre said Wednesday that cancellation of the temporary foreign worker program should include exceptions for difficult-to-fill agricultural jobs, as I just mentioned, while Eby said that the government must address, quote, these concerns of farmers and others that legitimately need temporary labor. He called it, quote, a very timely issue for the federal government to consider. Prime Minister Mark Carney said Wednesday that his government would review the program, but also added that it has a role to play. Eby said Carney's government has taken, quote, some good steps to rein in the excesses of the program, but Ottawa needs to do more. Statistics Canada said that there were 356,000 temporary foreign workers in Canada in 2001, rising to 845,000 in 2021. Canada set a target to admit 82,000 new temporary foreign workers this year, and you might have seen Melissa Landsman on the news complaining about the number of permits that were issued, and she said that's not decreasing. You have to remember, though, in that number, it's not only new ones, but people that are here who are having their permits renewed. So when she breaks out a huge big number, this is not an influx of new people. The overwhelming majority of that number are people that are already here that have had their permit extended. Conservative Party of BC leader John Rustad said sectors like agriculture and tourist destinations like Whistler are in desperate need of temporary foreign workers. Quote, however, it is clear in my mind that the immigration system is broken and has been broken for a number of years by Ottawa. And you all notice that all they can say is that the immigration system is broken, but they can't say why and they can't say how. They just say, oh my God, look at housing and look at healthcare. It has to be the immigrants. Look at the unemployment number. It has to be the immigrants. But they don't say how or why the immigrants affect these numbers. They never can. They can't make the case. British Columbia, like Quebec, should take control of immigration to develop a made in BC solution, he added. So there you go. John John Rustad imitating Danielle Smith a little bit on this one. Again, David Eby, a little bit of nuance, saying that there have been some good measures, but that more needs to be done. But again, right, there is a need for a temporary foreign worker program in certain instances. Can the program be better? Probably. But Pierre basically saying it needs to be scrapped because it's killing jobs for young Canadians. That's not particularly borne out by the facts. And like I said, hopefully it will be a slower weekend. And when we do Monday's show, I will have time to present that interview with that professor from McGill University, Fabienne Lange, to get a little more news as to why it is that a little more information as to why it is that Pierre is saying, what Pierre is saying or how he is framing it is a little disingenuous. But that is not to say that the situation of youth unemployment isn't serious, because it very much is. To a run of global news here. Canada's youth unemployment crisis is worse than it looks, and teens are the hardest hit, a new report by Desjardins says, noting that it is now at a level normally seen, quote, during a recession. The report says Canada youth employment has worsened since 2022, with overall youth unemployment rising from 10% in 2022 to 14% in mid-2025. Nearly 1 in 5 Canadian teens want to work but cannot find any jobs, the report noted. It added that young adults aged 20 to 24 also saw a mild increase in unemployment over the 3-year period from 9% to 11%. Quote, despite the relative resilience of Canadian labor market in the face of trade war uncertainty, the youth unemployment rate has spiked. The increase has been particularly pronounced among Canada's youngest workers, the report by Desjardins economists Carrie Norman and Randall Bartlett said. While youth unemployment has traditionally been higher than unemployment among core-aged workers aged 25 to 54, the gap seems to be widening. Quote, the youth unemployment rate has risen much faster than the unemployment rate for older age cohorts and is now at a level more commonly seen during a recession, the report read. Rapidly rising youth unemployment is usually a sign of economic turbulence, including recessions or economic downturns, the report added. Quote, looking back over the past half century, we see that each of the previous upticks in Canada's youth unemployment rate corresponded with a recession. It said, adding, however, that the current uptick is unusual since Canada has not been in a recession. And the sharp rise in Canada's population of young temporary residents since the pandemic has played a role in Canada's youngest workers not finding work, the report said. However, it also pointed to other factors such as the rise of the gig economy and slowing investment in Canada owing to the trade war with the United States. Quote, precarious employment, including contract and gig work, has taken on an increasing role in the youth labor market, the report said. According to Statistics Canada, more than 40% of self-employed youth are gig workers, as compared with 26% of self-employed core-aged workers. Quote, when we look at several major gig platforms in Canada, when we look at several major gig platforms in Canada, we see that minimum age requirements prevent most teens from qualifying for this type of work. Retail remains the largest source of youth employment, although its dominance is declining. In 2022, the retail sector accounted for 30% of youth employment. By mid-2025, it was less than 25%. So that youth employment is an issue that definitely needs to be addressed. Would scrapping the temporary foreign worker program do it? Probably not. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you loved listening to us, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you include a little word of your own, saying what it is about the show that you liked, or how or why it is that it resonated with you. Now, if you would like us to help you, kids and cubs, we can do that, because sometimes you are on the go and you don't have time to watch our video cast, but you still need to get things done and you still want to remain informed. Well, we can help with that, thanks to the generous contribution of the Ray Girl, who has sponsored our pod page. That's podpage.com/the-true-north-eager-beaver, with a hyphen between each one of those words. Or you can scan this QR code there. And when you do, it will take you right there. And when you click subscribe, we come directly to your favorite podcast feed in audio format. We're very portable. Just put us in our ears and take us with you and go on and take on the day. We make it convenient because we like to help. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, you can do so by grabbing your e-surfboard and hanging 10, going down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page where our kids, Cassie and Elaine, will be beckoning you to give our buttons a little tickle. Get frisky. Like, share, and subscribe. Give them a click. It helps us with the algorithm, and it also makes us very happy when we see our numbers go up. So thank you for that. And if you would like to help us in yet another way, we do incur some costs to bring this show to you: subscription fees, services to help us edit and find clips, and all bunch of other things. All of these things cost a little money, and subscription services have been going up with inflation. So if you could help us with that, we would be very grateful. As you know, we are entirely self-funding. We have not received any checks from George Soros or the Liberal Party or anything else. So it's just our money and the generous contributions of our viewers and our audience who see value in the work that we do, and the money that we get from Google by virtue of your viewership. Those are all the ways that you support us. So again, like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, you are supporting us financially, even if you're not able to make a financial contribution. So thank you very much for that. But if you would like to actually send us a little something, we would be very grateful. And you can do that by making a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, where every day we fight the scourge that is dry beaver. So please do what you must to keep your favorite beaver moist by making a lovely expression of enthusiastic encouragement in the form of a donation to our emergency hydration fund. That QR code that appeared will bring you there, or you can go to coffeeko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, to make your contribution. Sorry, there, my nose was itchy. And of course, all contributions are greatly appreciated, and they make you 17.8 more percent. Sorry, let's try that again. 17.8% more interesting at parties. I put the percentage, I put the more in the wrong spot in that sentence there. But kids and cubs, also, if you are doing the Buy Canadian thing, very important, and we want to support you in that as well, a direct bank-to-bank transfer to our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, is the way that you would make that contribution to bypass the CE Tech Bros with whom Donald Trump will be meeting. Again, it seems, I don't know if that's discussed, the next way in which they're going to try to take over the world, or discuss what the terms of the next tribute that they have to offer will be. But he is meeting with them. And when you donate through the CE Tech Bros, well, they take a cut of your donation, and then they take a portion of that and donate it back to Donald Trump so he can do terrible things to us. So we can't allow that to happen. So a bank-to-bank transfer helps prevent that, which is a big win. And because the CE Tech Bros don't get any money from it, which is another win, and they don't take a cut, that means that we get 100% of your donation, which is another win. Win, win, win. So please, if you can donate, please do so. We would be very grateful. We could definitely use the help. Now, kids and cubs, as we often say, because if you're not able to donate financially, the gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us. Like, for example, just watching on YouTube, right? That helps us. So if you are not able to contribute financially, please do not worry, but do write to us. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. That same email address that you will use to make a direct bank-to-bank transfer is the one you can use to let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly, and to send us some guest suggestions. Or if you happen to have a home-based business or involved in a community organization group, or know somebody who could use a little extra promotion, send them our way. And we have wonderful advertising rates, something for absolutely every budget. Even if all you have is just like $35 for 1 month to promote something at one specific time, we can find something that we can do to help you get the word out. to a larger audience. So, if you got a little something on Etsy, or if you're, and you would like people to buy them and know about it, or, anything like that of the sort, let us know. You have a bookkeeping service and you could use clients from other parts of Canada, expand your reach. Let us know, because we have a community of very engaged citizens who are very eager to buy Canadian and that are very informed and would certainly be very happy to do business with people who would be willing to do business with their favorite grizzly and beaver. So we appreciate all of your help and your suggestions. They do mean the world to us. Kids and cubs, because democracy is something that you do. Yes, do the I just said do again. Ugh. I gotta stop saying that. Forever-Canadian.ca. Go there so that you can sign up to become a canvasser, volunteer, pledge some money to the organization to help it with the work that it is doing, and also pledge to sign the petition. And of course, find out where your pop-up petition signing spot, and maybe even your permanent petition signing spot, might be, because you have to go there physically. Your signature needs to be witnessed for that to happen. But let's help get to that question about keeping Alberta in Canada on the ballot for Citizens Initiative here in Wild Rose Country. But in addition to forever-Canadian.ca and the fact that you've got provincial elections coming up in Newfoundland and Labrador and territorial elections in Yukon, as you know, the wildfire situation, particularly in Newfoundland and Labrador, has been pretty hairy, I would say. And the federal government announced in mid-August, and for some reason we had missed it, but we have found it. So we will tell you on August 21st, has announced that there will be a matching program for donations to Newfoundland and Labrador. So there is now a Newfoundland and Labrador appeal to help those affected by the wildfires that has been coordinated by the Red Cross. So this was August 21st. Today, the Government of Canada announced that it will match every dollar donated to the Canadian Red Cross 2025 Newfoundland and Labrador Wildfires Appeal to support wildfire disaster relief efforts across Newfoundland and Labrador. Through this initiative, the federal government will match donations Canadians and corporations make to the appeal. This means every dollar donated will become $2 for those affected by the wildfires. Donation matching will be open for 30 days, retroactive to when the appeal first opened on August 14th. So this keeps going till September 14th. So we're a little late bringing this to you, given that we're September 5th, but there are 9 more days if you would like to help your brothers and sisters in Newfoundland and Labrador with this wildfire appeal, and to be able to double your contribution by having it matched. The funds raised will be used to assist relief efforts in response to those impacted by the wildfires in Newfoundland and Labrador, including those who have evacuated their homes, or for those who say it the other way, Labrador and the other place. Thousands of people have been displaced as wildfires continue to threaten communities across the province. The funds raised will be used to provide disaster relief to residents most directly impacted in the affected areas. On August 20th, the request for federal assistance for Newfoundland and Labrador was extended until August 29th. The Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Coast Guard will continue to provide assistance to the province as it continues to deal with the impacts of current wildfires. The Government of Canada is committed to doing everything it can to support all those affected. Canadians wishing to make a financial donation to help those impacted by wildfires in Newfoundland and Labrador can do so online at www.redcross.ca or by calling 1-800-418-1111. And I believe that there is another method through email if I am checking. And I'm going to go check my notes to see if that is there. And yes, we care at redcross.ca is the email address you can use to do that. And Kits and Cubs, I am going to take a moment here to put up a web address here for you so that you can look at there. But give.redcross.ca will probably bring you there. There's a little more here on the web, but if you go there, that might be able to help you get there. But please do take note of this web address if you are kids and cubs looking at the show live, and I will post it to the show chat as well. So there is a link that you can click on, and please do what you can to help our brothers and sisters in Newfoundland and Labrador. The appeal continues until September 14th. All right, kids and cubs, as well, before we go today, going to talk about some Canadians who make us proud. We're going to talk about Mr. Wayne Middaugh, because the curling season is coming up again, and Wayne Middaugh, legendary Canadian curler, has been inducted into the World Curling Hall of Fame. So let's just get an image of him up there. So you can see him. If you've watched curling, certainly you recognize this face. And he's been around for quite a long time. But yes, Wayne Middaugh, one of the sport's most versatile players, was inducted into the World Curling Hall of Fame on Thursday. He's from Brampton, Ontario, and the only athlete to win world men's titles in 3 different positions. He earned gold in 1993 in Geneva, Switzerland, playing second for Russ Howard, skipped Canada to victory in 1998 in Kamloops, and added another in 2012 in Basel, Switzerland, playing third or vice for Glenn Howard. He also represented Ontario at 10 different Briars. He was previously inducted into the Canadian Curling Hall of Fame in 2020, following a decorated career disrupted by a skiing injury in 2016. And if you heard something fall, that was my cell phone that just fell to the floor. Also inducted on Thursday was Finland's Olli Rissanen, who led his country's curling federation for more than 2 decades, and Sweden's team's Peja Lindholm, a foursome that won 3 world championships and played in 3 Olympics. So congratulations to you, Mr. Middaugh, for being inducted into the World Curling Hall of Fame. Definitely much deserved. Also in Canadians that make us proud, but unfortunately are no longer with us. Oscar-nominated actor Graham Greene has passed away at the age of 73, according to CBC. Oscar-nominated actor Graham Greene died Monday in Stratford, Ontario, at the age of 73. His manager confirmed to CBC News, quote, "It is with deep sadness we announce the peaceful passing of award-winning legendary Canadian actor Graham Greene," Jerry Jordan said. The Oneida actor from the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario was best known for film roles such as Kicking Bird, a Sioux medicine man in 1990's Dances with Wolves, which earned him an Oscar nomination as Best Supporting Actor. He was also in The Green Mile with Tom Hanks in 1999 and The Twilight Saga: New Moon in 2009. On television, he had roles in Northern Exposure in the 1990s and more recently as a guest star in Reservation Dogs and The Last of Us. He told CBC Q's Tom Power earlier this year that he got his first acting opportunity when he was working as a roadie and someone asked him if he had ever considered acting. Even though he said he knew nothing about the theater or even what a script looked like, he said he gave it a try and he loved it. Quote, "I changed into the costume and they put me in the shade in a nice chair," he said. "They brought me food and water. I thought, geez, I'm living the life of a dog. This is great. I don't have to carry anybody's amplifiers anymore. I don't have to do lights. I don't have to drive halfway across the country for nothing." Overall, Greene won 2 Gemini Awards, a Canadian Screen Award for his role in Seeds, a Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album for Children for Listen to the Storyteller, and in 2025, the Governor General's Performing Arts Award for Lifetime Artistic Achievement. Quote, "That was a major coup. I thought, wow, why me?" he said on Q. "It means a lot to be recognized in my own country." Greene was also a member of the Order of Canada. And here we have an image of him receiving his Canada from Governor General Mary Simon. And that was on June 13th. So yeah, again, one of our great actors. And fellow actor Tom Jackson said that Greene was a friend and brother to him. Quote, "I never spent enough time enjoying Graham's company," he told CBC News Monday evening from Tantalon, Nova Scotia. "I wasn't necessarily a best friend to him, but he was a best friend to me." Jackson co-starred with Greene in the TV movie Medicine River and in the TV series Spirit Bay. He said Greene did whatever it took to be in show business, and he would run sound, build sets, be stage manager, believing that to be into show business, you had to be the business. And he was. He was an epitome of the business, Jackson said. It's an honor to be able to speak about Graham. Greene was in heady company at the 1991 Academy Awards, nominated in the Supporting Actor category alongside Al Pacino, Andy Garcia, Bruce Davison, and Joe Pesci, who would win for Goodfellas. He went on to play dozens of roles on stage and on screen in a career that spanned almost 5 decades, from major motion pictures like Thunderheart, Maverick, and Die Hard with a Vengeance, to a range of work on Canadian productions, including comedy The Red Green Show, children's programs The Invention of Dudley the Dragon, and a narrator host for Exhibit A, Secrets of Forensic Science. Today, we lost a great one, Indigenous filmmaker and actor Jennifer Podemsky said in a social media post. I feel so lucky to have known him, an epic loss for so many. Lou Diamond Phillips said, heartbroken, terribly saddened to hear of the passing of Graham Greene at only 73. From Wolf Lake to Longmire, we had a beautiful friendship. An actor's actor, one of the wittiest, wiliest, warmest people I've ever known, iconic and legendary. Rest in peace, or rest in power, perhaps. My brother. Greene's manager told CBC News the actor died of natural causes and that details regarding a remembrance celebration will be shared in the coming days. And also, Kits and Cubs, if you happen to be a resident of Yukon, they had to announce, according to this was the Yukon Art Center, we are deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Hank Kerr. Hank was more than a musician. He was a true Yukon icon whose songs and spirit touched so many lives. His legacy will continue to resonate across our territory. Our heartfelt condolences go out to his family, friends, and all who loved him. And we are definitely going to put an image of this gentleman here, Mr. Hank Kerr. Passed away. Again, very beloved in Yukon for all of his contributions to the culture in terms of what he was able to do there. Trying to find a little bit more on him, but I can't at the moment. So hopefully I will have more on him Monday, but wanted to mention because definitely someone who marked the history and the culture of the territory. And see, I have something here, but for some reason the file will not open when I click it, which is a shame. All right, Kits and Cubs, I will look for more on Hank Kerr here. There we go. He was Saskatchewan born, and he was a ball of musical energy. He has been described by CKRW Yukon by Les McLaughlin in something that he calls a Yukon nugget. He had a stage presence so natural it belied his shyness underneath. Hank Kerr did not blow his own horn. He didn't have to. Whenever he performed, fans and friends would be there to sing along and dance. Our friendship began when we were recording the first pan-Northern CBC radio series called Northern Jamboree in the 60s, first in the ballroom of the Old White Horse Inn and later in the CBC studios on 3rd Avenue. From then and during Canada's centennial year, when he represented the Yukon at Expo in Montreal until today, Hank Kerr has been a great ambassador for the territory. And through the years, he has never forgotten those fans who gave him undying loyalty. To this day, Hank Kerr represents a good song well sung. Hank's voice remains true to the country music sound he enjoys. He's an ambassador of Yukon and its music worldwide. His CDs and DVDs are testaments to the fact that a performer doesn't have to leave the Yukon to succeed in the music world. He was once asked why he didn't go to Nashville to make it. His reply was true to his philosophy. The Yukon, said Hank, is my Nashville. And so the famous Yukon balladeer celebrated his 70th birthday, and his friends at the time that this was written was celebrating his 70th birthday. And his friends know there will be many more songs and stories to come during and after Yukon. So I'm not sure exactly when this was written, but yes, Les McLaughlin, who clearly had a deep appreciation for Mr. Kerr. So there you go, kits and cubs. A little more about two great Canadians of whom we are very proud, but are no longer with us, unfortunately. All right. Words of wisdom. They're going to come today from Kit Tabby G, who actually put them in the chat yesterday. Everyone, since we've been talking about music with Hank Kerr, everyone find a little tune to dance to today. Booty shaking is encouraging. Damn it all. So it's Friday. Give your booty a shake. It's good for the soul. All right, kids and cubs, that is all I got from you today. So now it's time for our audience participation. And that means, kids and cubs, I need your help. I need you from wherever you are to say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. Yes. And I hear, in honor of Mr. Greene, some drumming, and in honor of Mr. Kerr, sorry, a little bit of a country twang in there. Had a little hiccup as I was saying that. So, kids and cubs, I must oblige because you guys did that so well. Here you go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kits and cubs, before we go, I just wanted to mention that tonight is the night that Felix Auger-Aliassime plays his semifinal against world number 1 Jannik Sinner at the U.S. Open. That is scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. Prior to that, at 3 p.m. In the afternoon, Novak Djokovic will be playing Carlos Alcaraz. And today at noon will be the final of the U.S. women's doubles with Katarina Siniakova and Taylor Townsend, first of Czech Republic and second of the United States, facing Canadian Gabriela Dabrowski of Canada and Eric Ralphliff, her partner, who represents New Zealand but has some Canadian connections as well. She used to play for Canada for a time. Will be playing in the final, and Dabrowski and Ralphliff will be going for their second Grand Slam doubles title together as a team. Dabrowski for her 4th one in her career, if you include her 2 mixed doubles titles, and that will be taking place at noon. So hopefully on Monday I'll have some very happy news to report about at least one Grand Slam champion, and maybe 2 if Felix is able to go all the way and keep on taking down giants as he has done so far. He's defeated 3 top 15 players in the world in a row to get to only his second Grand Slam semifinal in his career. So wishing both of them the best of luck, and hopefully you will have time to do the patriotic duty and sit in front of your TV and scream and yell as if they can hear you. And as if we could actually affect the outcome. Also, before we go, since we had been talking about jobs data about 20 minutes ago, and thank you, Kit Uncover, for bringing it to our attention in the chat, there are some job numbers that have come in, and according to CBC News, Canadian economy bled 60,000 jobs in August as unemployment rate hits its lowest since the pandemic days, and the unemployment rate has risen to the 7.1% that I mentioned earlier, which seemed to be the number at which many economists claimed that that number would peak. It's the highest, nearly the highest rate since 2016, and After the unemployment rate held steady in July at 6.9%, it increased again last month, making it the highest unemployment rate has been, excluding pandemic highs, since May 2016. Not sure why in two subsequent paragraphs they actually mentioned the same thing over again. The unemployment rate has been rising consistently this year, down from 6.6% in January. The figures are more dire than some economists had predicted. A Reuters poll ahead of the release predicted a gain of 10,000 jobs and the unemployment rate to rise to 7%. Of the jobs lost, Statistics Canada say most, some 66,000, were part-time ones, while there was little change in the number of full-time jobs. So at least there is that. We will show you the graph here. There it is. 2023, where it was 5.1% and got down to 5% on March of 2023, and then has been increasing steadily since March of 2023 to now 7.1%. Most of the jobs were among Canadian workers between 25, most of the jobs lost, were also among workers between 25 to 54 years old. So that would be the main cohort and not necessarily youth in this case. Employment also fell across a number of industries, including some hit by tariffs. In particular, the scientific and technical services sector lost 26,000 jobs, while transportation and warehousing dropped 23,000 and manufacturing bled 19,000. Construction, on the other hand, made gains, adding 17,000 new roles, so thus confirming, seems that that continues what we were reading earlier about construction increasing by 1.5% in the previous. It would seem that having to add 17,000 new roles in construction would probably be a sign that it continued to grow in August. This comes after the economy lost a total of 41,000 jobs last month. BMO chief economist Douglas Porter says that plainly today's news is not good. Quote, suffice it to say that this was worse than expected and arguably the weakest jobs report since the pandemic days. He says the losses in tariff-exposed sectors show the impact of the trade war. He says the weaker report could open the door to rate cuts by the Bank of Canada later this month, though with inflation remaining high, that factor hasn't given them the all clear. So again, another piece of data that increases the odds that the Bank of Canada could lower rates, but of course the inflation rate is probably going to be the one that matters most, because even though it is still below 2.2%, the inflation rate, as we mentioned, for very core essentials such as housing and food is above that. In fact, I think the overall inflation rate was 1.7%, but for food it was 3.3%, so nearly double that, which high inflation rates, yes. So yes, whatever the inflation rate is going to be, whether it goes higher or it goes low, can affect the Bank of Canada's decision. If inflation were to weaken, that could possibly give the Bank of Canada some impetus to want to stimulate the economy. Is it weaken or? See, I can't remember now anymore. I'm kind of lost in my thoughts. So just forget that last sentence I said. I never said it. And that's what happens when the show gets a little long. I sometimes get a little bungled up in my head. But we'll wait. We'll just end it by saying we'll wait for the inflation data to get us a better sense on whether or not there will be a rate cut. But it seems that all the data so far seems to be pointing to increasing chances of a rate cut. But the only thing there would be inflation, given that it is relatively high for the core elements there. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I got for you. And again, a little longer than expected, but there's just so much damn news lately. Hopefully on Monday, we'll be able to have a regular length show, because talking this much makes it such that when I'm done the show, I don't really want to say anything for the rest of the day, to be totally honest. I feel that I talk too much. All right, kids and cubs, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining me today and for joining us this week. And have lots of fun with your friends and family, or just take some downtime for yourself. And hopefully we will see each other together on Monday, refreshed and happy and rejuvenated and ready to take on a new week. All right. And with that, like magic, I am gone. Amour et bisous. Bye.